because it illustrates what happens. Like a lot of companies, he receives them, he reads them, and he passes them on.
Yes,
He
sir,
doesn't get
Crow.
into
Yes,
resolving
sir.
them. He passes them on
Thanks
to
for
people like
the
Mr.
donut,
Schiller,
bro.
who
Finally, I'm about to make it out the
who
jams. I'm
actually
about to make
take
it out
the
the
action
trenches.
to
Let's
decide what to
go.
do, and who are the original architects of this. So we didn't want to take an unreasonable position and say, we're not giving you Mr. Cook at all. We do understand that it's a significant case on some level. And so the compromise we reached is 4 hours, which, Your Honor, is, as you know, with depositions, essentially is a day for him. It's taking him out of commission for a day, which is already a significant amount of time. 7 hours on the record extends to 10 hours of the day, potentially, much longer prep. It's a much bigger imposition. We thought we took a reasonable approach.
Bro, I'm making out the trenches. Let's go. Let's go.
By the way, they don't say in
appreciate
their
it.
brief that 4 hours is not enough time to cover the things.
Crow, thank you so much. Hey, girl power. I had like
won't go
200
through the
people in
other
this
things
video.
they
But
talk
thank you
about
so
switching
much,
costs,
bro. Holy crap.
which
Thank
again
you.
is a generic subject. There's no reason to believe that Mr. Cook has any unique knowledge about switching costs or any number of other people at the company that deal with that they could depose for that. And then lastly, they say, oh, he must know about the competitive landscape. He's the CEO of Apple. Well, of course, that's true for every CEO. They know about their business. That, again, is not the standard. It is unique, firsthand relevance. And I would note that in the Corellian case that we cited in the context of the Q and Federighi dispute, Mr. Federighi of Apple was at a time ordered to sit for a deposition of 4 hours, but it was only after he had been involved in meetings that he was in that were part of the case and submitted a declaration.
Thanks, bro. I
don't
love
have
you,
that
my
here
nigga.
for
Like,
Mr.
if you
Cook
come over, let me
or
beat them
frankly
cheeks
for
up.
Mr.
It's
Federighi
over,
or
bro. I
Q.
love you. Thank you,
But as a result, Your Honor, we're very concerned about an order that puts Mr. Cook up for deposition in any case that alleges that Apple's business model is at stake. We think the App Store is at stake, and we have the person for the App Store available for them to depose.
All right, thank you. Let me hear from the plaintiffs.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I do note you said plaintiffs. It's not just Epic. I'll take the lead, but there are 3 cases here, not just Epic.
Oh
and of course, that means that those
y'all gotta go sub to Crow.
would be
Go
split
sub to Crow right now.
3 ways. But one other thing I think is very interesting is I just heard Apple's counsel say how this entire case, I guess Epic's case, but maybe he referred to all 3, is only about the App Store. But we just got done hearing how it has nothing to do with Apple, and it's all about competition across all platforms and all markets. And it is about Android. It is about
talk your shit,
what
Lori.
switching costs there will be and how Epic's, if it's just about Fortnite, how Fortnite is distributed on all those other platforms. So it's not just about the App Store. And in fact, that is why, in particular, we do need Mr. Cook and we do need Mr. Federighi, because they're not simply App Store people. They are implicating the highest strategic level decision-making on how to structure Apple's business model, what changes to make, what decisions to make. It is not just about Mr. Schiller. I get that Apple, that he's their favorite witness. He's going to be their 30B6 witness. He's going to be their trial witness. We get to depose people who we think have relevant information, and it's not just unique. We don't have to prove that Mr. Cook will not say anything that overlaps with anyone else. But Mr. Cook has spoken publicly about switching costs. He has knowledge of switching costs. He has knowledge of why the model commission structure was selected and why it's maintained. I really don't want to dwell on this too much, Your Honor, other than to say Apple offered 6 tethered to a whole bunch of other agreements. We couldn't agree. We narrowed down from 10 to 8. Your Honor, 7 hours we will make do with, or at least I'm speaking on behalf of Epic. If that's where we're ending up, I don't think you need to hear anything else from me on this, but 4 hours is just not enough. We have to divide this up. We understand he's a busy man. This is not a harassment case like all the cases Apple cites. That is not what we're doing here. We are trying to depose people with the relevant critical knowledge at the key areas of this company that are implicated in these 3 cases. And we're going to do it together, and we're coordinating. We will do so in 7 hours.
All right. Did the class plaintiffs want to weigh in? If you've divided up oral argument among yourselves, then you don't have to, but I just want to give you the opportunity.
Just very little to say in addition, Your Honor. Class plaintiffs also, at least the developers, could live with 7 hours, and we'll do our best, obviously, to split as efficiently as possible with Epic and with the consumers. Again, we just want to underscore what Ms. Moskowitz said. These are 3 separate major cases. In and of themselves, each would be a major case. And again, 4 hours is simply too little. I think the court's landing on 7 hours is something that's fair to all concerned. So this isn't just a run-of-the-mill case. I don't know about this pistachio case. Again, that seems to be centered just on one aspect of Apple's business. Investigation here that Mr. Cook provided testimony to, including live testimony. And those issues are obviously very important, not only to these cases, but to the country at large, which is grappling with the power of these large platforms. So again, I think probably 7 hours, as the court has indicated, is a good compromise. We wish that we could have more time, and we think we're entitled to 10 hours under the coordination order, but we understand the concerns that the court has raised and that Apple has raised. And so I think with that, I'll close.
All right, Ms. Bird, anything the consumer plaintiffs want to add?
On behalf of consumers, we also believe that 7 hours is a good compromise, that we should be able to get what we need, the questioning that we need to take within that time period. And Apple's concerns about precedent should be alleviated by noting that there are 3 very big and important cases that have been coordinated here.
All righty.
If I may just briefly respond, just a few points. One, you heard Mr. Lopez say at the end that not only is Mr. Cook relevant to the cases here, but that he could speak to important issues that are important to the country at large. That's exactly our concern. This is not an opportunity for plaintiffs to start asking him questions about issues that are important to the country at large. And that's exactly what we worry about, that they don't need Mr. Cook for more than 4 hours. In fact, you heard Ms. Moskowitz say that we were working on a deal to negotiate 6 hours. And we would just respectfully say then, Your Honor, the plaintiffs had said, if you give us more time with other people, maybe we can live with 6 hours for Mr. Cook. They know they don't need more than 6 hours with Mr. Cook. More than 6 hours with Mr. Cook will only lead to the type of mischief that we are concerned about, that Mr. Lopez, sort of previewed. And that's exactly why we are very focused on this. So at a minimum, Your Honor, if you're inclined to go forward and give them more than 4 hours, we would respectfully suggest that it at least be limited to 6, a number that the plaintiffs were willing to at least negotiate at one point.
Well, that was the deal that didn't work out. So if the parties make deals, then you get the benefit of those deals. And if the deal doesn't come together, then it's all sort of left on the floor and the court's going to resolve the dispute. But okay, I think I have what I need for Cook's deposition.
Look at the Apple leadership page. I think there's something like 16 people listed on the entire page for the company worldwide. That includes a bunch of people from that have foreign responsibilities. And so you already have Mr. Schiller and Mr. Q, Mr. Schiller and Mr. Cook now, who are of course at the very tip of that Himalayan range of apex witnesses. And both Q and Federighi, Mr. Q and Federighi are also on that page. So we are talking about folks who are the top 16 or so people in what is the biggest company in the world. And so these are truly apex people, and plaintiffs are also now getting a full day with Mr. Cook. What in a typical case would be a 7-hour deposition would be a full day with Mr. Cook, and of course Mr. Schiller as well. And so we think this is now getting very excessive.
Okay, all righty. And let me hear from the plaintiffs.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Your Honor's remarks in the beginning apply equally to Mr. Q and Mr. Federighi. This is not a case where we're just trying to get high-level executive depositions to talk about policies and procedures, or the same thing you can get out of an interrogatory or a 30B6. We don't want the company line from these guys. We want to understand what is going on in the space in between the policies and procedures. There are discretionary decisions that are happening about App Store issues, about developers, about exceptions, about policy changes and where the company is going to go in the future with respect to the App Store for Mr. Q. Mr. Schiller is another one of those decision makers, but he's not the only one. Some decisions go to Mr. Q, some go to Mr. Schiller, sometimes they disagree. Mr. Schiller is in the room where it happens in some meetings, and Mr. Q is in the room where it happens in others. And Mr. Q is a central person regarding even Apple's view of how narrow this case is supposed to be when it was making its argument just now about the App Store. Mr. Q is one of the two people that Apple's own witnesses have said has veto power over decisions. He is consulted and deciding on critical issues of how to enforce or not enforce their stated policies and procedures, their stated guidelines. So it's not about harassment. This person is very relevant. Apple themselves put him on their initial disclosures. We're not pulling him out of thin air. There were a lot of other people that we contemplated getting documents from and deposing. We've narrowed it down. Mr. Q is highly relevant for all of the same reasons Mr. Schiller is. They don't get to pick which of the two they want us to talk to. And certainly we have issues with Mr. Schiller's deposition and the timing of that I will want to raise if Your Honor will be willing to hear us out after this. But we're not willing to just go with who Apple wants us to talk to on these key issues. With respect to Mr. Federighi, it's a completely separate question. Mr. Federighi isn't at the App Store level, and that's precisely why we want him. Apple is making a lot of arguments. Their entire pro-competitive justification, or at least a large part of it, is about security and why they have to have security. Their position is that they want that at the App Store level, and that's where it's happening. We don't think that's right. We don't buy the party line that they're giving us in their interrogatory answers on that. We want to talk to the person who is developing the tools, developing the security features at the operating system level so that we can actually test and poke the holes that we think are there on Apple's, what we believe, pretextual argument for why it is controlling the App Store distribution. So Mr. Federighi, we've talked about this on the custodian stage. He is clearly relevant to these issues, and we get to talk to him, in our view, about what his documents are and what these issues are. No one else, not Mr. Schiller and not Mr. Cook, can talk about the technical and engineering aspects of security and the tools that Apple's providing, why they're developing them, how they invest in them, why they invest in them. And that is happening at Mr. Federighi's level, not just for iOS, but also for Mac OS. And Mac OS is another area that we're going to want to test in this case because it's Apple's own operating system that it has developed in a completely different way, in an open way, and whether and to what extent the security features can happen at an operating system level, we are going to want to test that with Apple's own platform, Mac OS. And Mr. Federighi has absolute personal knowledge over that system, choices that are made, and distinctions between Mac OS and iOS. So we think he's absolutely fundamentally relevant, not substitutable, as is Mr. Q. So we have tailored our request here. We didn't ask for all 10 of those SVPs or however many 17 people are on Apple's webpage. We went to the people we think we need. We asked for their documents. We got them. Mr. Q's documents were already part of this case. Apple always had him as a custodian. And we got Mr. Federighi's. We need to talk to them about these key issues, about issues that are fundamental to all three of our cases to implement the business model. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do the class plaintiffs want to add anything?
Yes, Your Honor, sorry about that. I couldn't get unmuted. Well, first of all, I'm not sure exactly what questions the court's going to have, but to the extent the court is interested in Apple's exhaustion argument, Apple makes a broad statement at page 8 of the letter brief that somehow all of us agreed to an expedited schedule. And of course, that's not true with respect to the class plaintiffs. So I wanted to point out that distinction as well. But again, to underscore what Ms. Moskowitz said in one particular sense, the plaintiffs, I think, have made a fulsome record here with regard to the particular issues that we want to get into these folks. It's definitely not about any kind of stunt or anything beyond these cases. These are all grounded in the important issues that these issues raise specifically. And that's the same for Mr. Cook, frankly. Again, when I raised Mr. Cook's testimony to Congress, I'm not talking about in a general sense. I mean, Mr. Cook specifically testified with regard to the commission rates and with regard to what he thinks, and therefore what Apple thinks justifies those rates. So these are all grounded in very specific issues that we think all the plaintiffs should go into and must go into in their cases.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bird, anything further from the consumer plaintiffs?
No, Your Honor, I don't have anything to add.
All right, Mr. Srinivasan, some reply from Apple.
Sure, Your Honor. In listening to Ms. Moskowitz's justification for Messrs. Q and Federighi really strikes me as we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. I mean, she wants it both ways. On the one hand, Mr. Q is relevant and is absolutely necessary and critical because he overlaps with so many other people, including Mr. Schiller. He's central to the case, which is the App Store, and therefore he absolutely must be deposed. But when it comes to Mr. Federighi, it's suddenly, hey, we need Mr. Federighi because he overlaps with nobody. He overlaps with not the central issue in this case, and therefore he has to, of course, be deposed. And the issue really, I think, is sharpened when you think about it in the context of Mr. Federighi, and I'll come back to Mr. Q. But as there's no dispute, Mr. Federighi sits at the top of engineering, software engineering for Apple. That is a large mountain that he sits at the top of. There are many, many executives and, of course, other employees below him. We had offered one to them. We said, Mr. Neuenschwander now is the person who can speak to these issues, who is not an Apex executive, who doesn't need to be bothered. Now, in the context of documents, Your Honor, you said to us, and we agreed, you ultimately said, look, I know you would rather produce Neuenschwander's documents. They want Federighi. Why does it matter? They're poking, they're going down the wrong hole. Let them get Federighi's documents, and even though you've offered to give them a better custodian, that's on them. It doesn't matter. This is not Apex. Well, now we're at Apex. And at Apex, the rule is if we say there is somebody less burdensome that you should take on the very same issues that you want, they have to do that. They haven't even tried. And in fact, as Ms. Moskowitz says, there is a whole different operation that Mr. Federighi is in charge of. He's not the App Store. And he is the Apex executive of that operation. That is not the key piece of the case of the company that's at issue in this case. How in the world do you get to go to the top executive first? And particularly where we say there's another executive. Mr. Neuenschwander is a senior executive himself. He's not the top of the operation. We said take his deposition. You want to talk about these issues? He can talk about those issues. They have 15 other depositions they can take. They didn't take a single person. They didn't ask for a single person. They insisted on the number one guy in the organization who leads a 1,000-person division. And that's the problem with Mr. Federighi. And we can go into more details that we've briefed. Now with Mr. Q, it's similar. With Mr. Q, he is also at the top of a different organization now, Apple Music and iTunes. It's right there on the website. And actually a bunch of other things, Apple search ads and a number of other initiatives that Apple has. What he is not in charge of is the App Store. They have Mr. Schiller. I know that we're a broken record on that, but they will get Mr. Schiller. They have asked and they have deposed and will be deposing the VP of the App Store, VP of Developer Relations, and a number of other people who are in the App Store organization who will give Epic and the plaintiffs as many different views on the App Store as their hearts could desire. It's not one person. We're not putting forward one Mr. Schiller who is going to be the spokesperson and give the party line. They have literally a dozen other people, almost all of whom are executives, many of whom are high-level executives who they can ask these questions to. Nothing they showed about Mr. Q is unique to Mr. Q. There's no aspect of any document, Your Honor, that they provided to you or any deposition testimony they provided to you. Nothing is unique to Mr. Q. At a minimum, they should come back to you at some point after they've taken 5. They still haven't been able to identify anything where somebody said, well, Mr. Q is the only guy. They identified a few documents that said, well, it would be Mr. Schiller or Mr. Q or maybe Mr. Cook. Nothing that said this is just Mr. Q. And they can take some more depositions and they're going to find the same thing. But the fact is this isn't just sort of open season on Apple. There has to be some constraints. We are already doing 16 depositions in this case of other high-level Apple executives. There has to be a limit to it. They haven't shown you any discipline in saying very specifically why these two folks are needed. And in the case of Mr. Federighi, they've affirmatively spurned our offer to give them a less intrusive deposition on the very issues that they see.
All right. Are you still bound by the prior deadline you had to complete depositions in the Epic case?
We are, Your Honor. February 15th is the day that is the cutoff date. We believe, it's an interesting case where I think in most antitrust cases, most complex cases where you have a typical discovery period of 9 months to a year, parties at the end say, we're going to have to let a few depositions go over, whether they formally get an extension or not. It's something that's typically worked out. That's been our experience. Okay. In this case, Epic is unwilling in a compressed discovery schedule where we're trying to do all of this in just a few weeks. We think it's absolutely necessary to do that. And frankly, we can get into those issues later, Your Honor. We don't think it's physically possible. There are days that we have 10 depositions likely scheduled in this case with third parties on one day. So forget about triple tracking. It's 10. I don't know what is it, DESA tracking? I don't know if I've ever counted that high. But that's where we are, and we do believe that part of the way that this can be resolved is to extend that date a little bit, through direct court order or through the parties cooperating to do so. But at least Epic, I don't know where the class plaintiffs are in this, is absolutely unwilling to be flexible about this.
What I was leading up to is I would like to take a couple of days to digest the oral argument before I get out my order. So probably on Wednesday or Thursday, I would get it out. And I want to know, would that cause a problem for the parties?
Your Honor, speaking for Apple, that is the least of the problems Apple has, would be your order coming out 2 or 3 days later. We have, dozens of unscheduled depositions or depositions we're still trying to schedule, document productions on both sides that are slower than they were anticipated to be. And so we have a lot of problems, Your Honor, meeting that date, but I don't think your order coming out a few days will be a problem for us.
Go ahead. Let me just ask the plaintiffs your view. Would it be a problem if I took 2 to 3 days to get this order out?
Your Honor, Lauren Moskowitz, to address that specific question, no, but I have a lot of additional things to say.
I want to think about it, but I know that you're under tight deadlines, so at least in the Epic case, I don't want to cause any problems. Ms. Moskowitz, you have more on the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of points just in response to some of the things that Apple's counsel just said. We have been asking for depositions since before Christmas for the dates. Everyone's known our list.
We get it together, nigga. Come on, chat.
It's 14 additional people besides Mr. Q and Mr. Federighi. We have been asking for dates. Apple has been not giving us dates, including some of the people who they say we should have deposed before pressing for Mr. Federighi. We asked to depose them before we got here today. They refused to give us dates in that window. They pushed them. In fact, one of them we don't even have. And then they want us to depose someone who, Your Honor, specifically said is not the right custodian for us to have. It's an odd situation that Apple thinks that it's a benefit to them that they haven't allowed us to take any of these depositions as a way to stop us from taking Mr. Federighi's deposition. That is not the standard. The other aspect of what Mr. Srinivasan said that's troubling is that they repeatedly complain about this schedule. They've complained to you multiple times. They've even complained to Judge Gonzalez-Rogers in a brief where they asked Judge Gonzalez-Rogers to move the schedule. The judge said no. In fact, reaffirmed everything about our schedule. We are headed towards a May 3rd trial. A lot of things are tethered off of that, including the fact discovery deadline, which is not just February 15th for our fact discovery in Epic. It's our deadline for opening expert reports. Nothing can slip. Everything is, you pull that thread and the thing falls apart. We need to keep it. And Apple is engaging in self-help by just dragging their feet and refusing to schedule depositions, give us answers to interrogatories, give us documents that they've been promising us, and then saying we can't get it done. That's not one of their options. We have to comply with the court schedule. So I do have a few issues that, Your Honor, we tried to brief with Apple. They refused to give us their portion of the joint statement. We gave ours over the weekend. We need some relief from the court as soon as Your Honor can hear us out, some of which I actually don't think needs a joint statement. It's pretty simple. For example, Apple has given us Mr. Schiller on February 15th for a
Yo, a lot of people are streaming my stream right now, so subscribe to Wavy, bro. Subscribe to Wavy, by the way.
We immediately rejected that and said that can't happen. They can't put their favorite witness, who also, by the way, Your Honor, is going to be their 30B6 witness for up to a dozen topics. They haven't told us which topics, but they've told us.
Let me preview something for you. I'm not going to rule on any. I had a fair amount of briefing coming into this hearing, and that's what I've been able to consider. So I'm not going to rule on the merits of a new dispute you raise, but what I'm willing to do is to set a briefing schedule and a further hearing, if you would like me to do that.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I was just previewing the issues, but yes, I'm happy to do that. And Apple's had our joint statement portions for days, so we would ask Your Honor to order Apple to respond by this afternoon and for us to file the joint statement as soon as possible. And if Your Honor would like a hearing on that, to schedule that as soon as you have availability. And I can.
Your Honor, can I be heard on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, because this is actually a little bit outrageous. So you continued the hearing from Friday today because you wanted to see some more documents, which made sense. There was no briefing schedule on Saturday morning at 1 a.m. This past 2 days ago. We received a brief from them to say, brief this by tomorrow. Okay. Then we got another one on Sunday morning and said, brief this by later today. That's what she's talking about the briefs that we've had for days. Okay. So that's not the way we do things here. We have them. We haven't looked at them. We have other things to do. We're trying to comply with all the things they're asking us to do. We don't have time to needlessly brief. We are happy to have a hearing on these issues, but we have to have a chance to do it in an orderly way. And let me just step back. I do want to address the broader point. Ms. Moskowitz is right about one thing, and that is we have been a broken record about the schedule. We said to the judge, Judge Gonzalez-Rogers, that we think we need more time to do this. She said no. Well, Epic said, we don't need more time. And I won't read you the quotes, but they said something like, we just want some targeted limited discovery on IAP, which is just a small piece of this case. That's what they said to her. And then she said, based on that, okay, then we'll give you Epic's abbreviated schedule. Well, their idea of limited targeted discovery has been 86 document requests, 9 more custodians, translates to 8 million documents more that Apple is reviewing. I don't believe that is the discovery that Judge Gonzalez-Rogers had in mind when she set this schedule. Now, Epic then, for its part, has kept the pedal to the metal on that. They've doubled down. So they said, we need 9 new custodians. You know what we said? We said, you know what? We can't do that by January 6th. That's the deadline. By the way, Ms. Moskowitz talks about the sacrosanct February 15th deadline. The deadline for document production was January 6th. And we very openly said to them, you are asking us to review millions of documents. We cannot produce those by January 6th. We can tell you right now we can't. But they made a deal. They made a decision. They said, you know what? We would rather have those documents, produce them later. We said, you know what? It's going to be mid to late January, maybe even bleeding into February. That's what we told them from day one. They said, fine, we'll take it. Then they turn around and say, we want 16 depositions, and for every deponent, we want the documents 14 days before that deposition. Well, let's think about it. January 6th was a deadline for the original deadline that we said we couldn't meet. So at a minimum, they said, we don't want to take any depositions before January 20th. So now we're talking about taking 16 depositions of theirs, 14 depositions of ours. They want dozens of third-party depositions, all between basically January 20th and February 15th. We've been trying to be adults about it. We've said, look, one of two things have to happen. Either your outsized appetite for depositions and documents has to be renegotiated or downsized, or we need more time in the schedule. We physically can't do both. In every other case I've been in, that's something the parties do. In this case, where we need it more than any other case, given this compressed discovery, it's not happening. And instead, they are going to come in and they're going to insist that Apple produce millions of documents ahead of when we said we would, so they can cram in dozens of depositions of people they don't even need. And that's the situation. We can brief it. I don't know how the court is going to resolve it. Our own view is the parties need to sit down and be adults and work this out. But if they want to say we want all this to happen We're not going to be flexible. On
He's
what we
talking
want to
about how
happen, and we're not gonna be
Epic
flexible on the
didn't
date.
give it a
I
chance.
don't
They
even
just
know
want to do
how
blah
your
blah blah. That's what
honor
they're
is
talking
gonna
about right
resolve
now.
that.
But guys, look,
But, you know,
I
we
need
should have
21
a
likes so I
briefing
get
schedule
300
on
likes.
it.
300 likes, I
And
will be
we
doing a
can kind of
little
deal with it then.
special
But I
show
would
for
urge
y'all.
council here,
Feel me?
you know, everybody on this Zoom, we need to work on this. We need to figure out something, because I don't think, Your Honor, that you can order things to happen that aren't physically possible.
Well, we'll see. So here's the deal. Judge Gonzalez-Rogers sets the case schedule, and then I manage discovery within the boundaries that she sets. So that's all I can really do. So I hear the two sides' points of view on whether those deadlines should be extended. I'm happy to listen to whatever you say. There's simply nothing I can do about that. All I'm going to do is manage whatever is the appropriate amount of discovery to take place by the deadline. So I do think that with respect to party depositions, the parties should work that out, because I'm going to order those depositions to happen by February 15th, because that's the only thing I really can do. So I do think the parties should try to get those all scheduled. But if you can't, then I'm happy to have a hearing. And I don't think either of you is going to like that hearing, because I'm just going to pick dates on a calendar and order depositions to happen on certain dates, and they may not be what either of you want. But if I'm put in the bind where I have to schedule
Stop picking
16
hearings and just stuff when I come out
by
already. Oh my god.
mid-February,
Also,
and we're almost
guys,
at the end of
we need
January,
13
that's
more
all I
likes and we
can
need
really
300
do,
likes. Do
is
me
just
right,
say,
bruh.
this depot's on this date, and then order you to do that. So I do think it's to both sides' benefit if you can avoid doing that. So what I would like to do now is set a briefing schedule, but I want to make sure I understand the issues coming at me. Ms. Moskowitz, is it the scheduling of the Apple party depositions? Is that the issue, or are there more issues than that?
There are a few issues, Your Honor. So I'll just briefly summarize so you have a sense of the universe. So it's that Apple hasn't given us dates for several witnesses, 5 plus Mr. Q and Federighi, to the extent that those are going to happen. We also are an issue over the timing of Mr. Schiller's deposition, which we do not want to start at the close of fact discovery. We want it earlier for several reasons. It's the issue that, which I haven't summarized yet, but Apple is dumping documents on us on the eve or even after some of these depositions and unilaterally trying to cancel them. We have a deposition scheduled for Wednesday, Mr. Kuzminka, that Apple let us know over the weekend that they had just produced 65,000 and are producing another 65,000 documents for him sometime this week at some point. We are insisting that deposition start on Wednesday. We can't keep pushing things off. We have to start, and we want Apple to agree or be ordered by the court to make him available for his second day, a longer second day at some point after they have produced the documents, and to commit to a date certain on that. So that one is a little bit tough to wait just because his deposition is starting on Wednesday. Apple hasn't responded to our notice of deposition to confirm that we will be getting him for longer than the 10 hours and to start it as scheduled. So maybe that's something we can just put aside because it's a little bit pressing. We have the same issue about a deposition starting tomorrow where they dumped 10,000, which I guess drop in the bucket compared to 130, but still they're producing documents at the last minute on these depositions, and they have to get their act together on these documents. These are not new custodians. These are old custodians. So the arguments that Apple's counsel made don't apply to them. So that's the other deposition related issue that, again, we may need to brief or to hear on an expedited basis. There's a couple of other issues, Your Honor, not directly tied to deposition. Some interrogatory answers that Apple keeps refusing to give us supplemental answers to, and we're running out of time. We need them. We're 21 calendar days away from our expert reports going in and for fact discovery to close. So we need, unfortunately, the court to compel them to do it, because absent us coming to you, we just don't get them to move. So while I wish I didn't have to bring disputes like this to Your Honor, we unfortunately do. And we have a similar issue about some document production issues where they committed to tell us basic things about what we were getting and what standards they were applying, which custodians they were doing, and they haven't done that either. They committed to and just haven't done. So those are 3 separate letter briefs that Apple has, and about document issues, interrogatories, and depositions. There's a little bit more meat on the bones on that, but I'm cognizant that Your Honor is not looking for a full-blown presentation on them, just a summary.
Okay, so there's 3 letter briefs that you've sent to Apple, is that right?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Srinivasan, when will Apple be able to brief its portion of those 3 letter briefs?
Sure, Your Honor. We think maybe by Thursday we could comfortably do that. We have a lot going on. I mean, we are quadruple tracking, and so we do need some time. I would just mention briefly that a number of these issues, particularly on the interrogatories and the document production, parties have worked it out or working it out, and we will. I mean, we will or we won't. I mean, if Epic is going to insist on bringing these to the court, we'll brief them. But I think many of these will be moot. Just a few things. Mr. Kosminka, he is not a new custodian. He is an Epic custodian for which he has an Epic production, which is the ones that started anew. That is the issue with Mr. Kosminka. The notice for Mr. Kosminka we received 4 days ago, which did not give us enough time to move to quash. They can't now complain that they can't, we have to be compelled to go forward on that day when they didn't give us enough time to move to quash with just 4 days on that subpoena. And so we think that, again, the parties are going to have to work out these disputes and until Your Honor weighs in on them whenever Your Honor can.
All righty, so let's turn to that. Here's what I'm ordering. I'm ordering the parties to file these 3 joint discovery letter briefs by noon on January 29th, which is this Friday. And then I'm going to schedule a hearing for Monday or February 1st at 10 a.m. on those letter briefs. With respect to deposition scheduling issues, I strongly encourage
guys, we need 10 more likes and I will be showing a video of me dancing, bro. I might be going crazy, you never know, bro.
The 2 sides find mutually satisfactory is likely to be better than one that I order, especially since the next hearing is going to be 14 days before all the depositions have to come to an end in the Epic case. So you have a strong incentive to work this out. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm scheduling a hearing for Monday, February 1st at 10 a.m. And I want these letter briefs in by noon on January 29th. Is there anything else that plaintiffs would like to raise today for today's purposes?
Your Honor, pardon me.
Go ahead.
Just the extent on just on the 2 depositions that are happening tomorrow and Wednesday, is Your Honor open to providing some guidance to us on that? Just given that the briefing schedule obviously is moot, that issue will be mooted.
I don't feel like I have an informed basis that I can do that. Sorry. I think you should work it out.
Your Honor, to that end, Ms. Moskowitz mentioned the deposition tomorrow and the documents that we received just last night. I'm not sure exactly what the count is. I know she referred to something around 10,000. I'm not sure if she means that count as 10,000 documents or pages, but it's certainly a lot of pages, and we're still in the process of literally putting those into the system, ingesting those, and figuring out exactly what's there. But again, that deposition begins tomorrow on a 30B1 basis, but also where the class plaintiffs are concerned, where the developers are concerned. Apple told us, I believe it was yesterday at 10:47 a.m. that they'd also designated the deponent that begins tomorrow as their 30B6 spokesman as to 2 of our topics. And the fact that they've just produced this large number of documents last night, there's no way we can do a 30B6 deposition of him as well, whether it's tomorrow or continue to the next day. So I just wanted to put that on the court's radar. We understand the court's instruction to try to work those things out. We'll try to do that with Apple, but that may be something we need to raise with the court as well, depending on what Apple says when we raise this with it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, just lastly, I don't want to keep you, but to the extent we have that date, we do have some other brewing issues that we didn't yet raise on 30B6 negotiation, third-party depositions, and getting an agreement on that. And if the parties can't reach an agreement on that, I assume, Your Honor, it'd be okay for us to send a letter brief to the other side and have that briefed as well.
Yeah, that's fine. If there are additional disputes, whether Apple raises them, whether plaintiffs come up with additional ones, anything you want me to hear.
We need
Monday,
8 more
February
likes
1st,
and I will be showing a video of me vibing and dancing and being groovy. You know how I am.
Fine to raise additional issues.
Shake it, move it like a shout shaker. Move it like a salad shaker.
All right.
Move it like a
Thank you,
salad
counsel.
shaker.
And it looks
Move
like
it
I'll
like
be
a
seeing you
salad
a
shaker.
week from today. So I wish you luck in working things out, and I'll see what you're unable to work out, and we'll talk about it then.
Thank you, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge. We're off the record. Court is in recess. Thanks, Marla.
Recording stopped.
They're taking a break right now. They're taking a break right now. Move it like a salad shaker. Move it like a salad shaker. Move it like a salad shaker. So, they're on recess. You feel me? They said a good 20 minutes and they'll be back. So, in 20 minutes, you feel me? I'm still gonna be streaming, but since you guys really want to see me dance and move it like a salad shaker, move it like a salad shaker, I might as well just show y'all moving me like a salad shaker, move it like a salad shaker. I got y'all boys. Alright, bro, we're on recess right now, so it's a good 20 minutes. We can play pubs. What are y'all boys trying to do? Farmer likes and we hit actually 300.
You guys, can you hear me? I'm currently in school right now, so I'm not gonna talk. I'm just gonna talk for like 1 minute. So they're taking a break right now. Can you guys hear me? You guys, can you hear me? Yeah. So they're taking a break right now. And I'm in school, so I'm not gonna talk. Actually, guys, I'm gonna end the stream and then come back when it comes out. Should I do that? I'll come back when you're... Yeah, I'm in online school. I'll come back when they stream again.